To the Point with Kelly Dunn and Michael Williams.
She has never run for office before, and Dina Keever only thought about running for state attorney after hearing about hardball politics in the race. Does she have what it takes to win over the voters in Palm Beach County? Good morning and welcome to The Point. It is a three-way race for state attorney in Palm Beach County with Democrat Dave Ehrenberg and independent Robert Gershman running with no party affiliation, already throwing accusations at one another.
The quiet candidate so far is Republican Dina Keever, and she is our guest this morning. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's get to the point and tell us about your background and why you would make the best state attorney for Palm Beach County.
Okay. My background, of course, is law and public service. I have a journalism degree, and I went to law school not to be an attorney, but because I wanted to be a prosecutor. I did an internship in Leon County State Attorney's Office while in law school.
FSU grad.
At FSU, and that confirmed to me that prosecution was my calling. Immediately after law school, I clerked for a federal judge in Miami, Peter Fay, a well-respected judge who's been a judge now for 42 years. From there, I became a federal prosecutor. I worked in Miami at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of Florida, and then on to Philadelphia U.S. Attorney Office in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania.
Any particular set of cases you concentrated on?
Well, while in Miami, I was in the narcotics division and did high-profile, large drug investigations. In Philadelphia, I did the same, and then went on to different types of crime in Philadelphia: bank robberies, public corruption, financial fraud, those types of cases. I've prosecuted over 250 federal cases.
Is it your experience, you think, that will set you apart from your challengers?
I do believe that. I believe that the top prosecutor in Palm Beach County should be a prosecutor. And I have the most prosecutorial experience of the three candidates. And I think that that will serve me well and will make me an effective state attorney.
For those unaware, that's a subtle criticism of Democrat Dave Ehrenberg. Talk about his experience or lack therein as you see it. He is the pill mill czar, has done a lot of work in that regard, a former state senator, has contacts everywhere, a well-established Democratic organization behind him. Do you not think he has enough experience to sit in the top job?
I believe that his experience has been great, but I don't believe that it's the type of experience that you need to run an office of prosecutors. He is basically a public policy setter. He has never tried a criminal case. He has not been in the trenches with other prosecutors and law enforcement officers, investigating cases, interviewing witnesses, managing cases. He does not have any experience in that arena. I believe his role as the pill mill czar has been basically one of policy setting. He has not prosecuted any pill mill cases. The cases that I'm aware of in South Florida in the pill mill arena have been prosecuted by the state attorney's office here and the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Robert Gershman, though, a longtime defense attorney, certainly knows his way around a courtroom.
That's correct. For the last 15 years of his career, he's been a defense attorney, which is very different from being a prosecutor. He spent his time...
Spent time as a prosecutor, though.
He did early on in his career. But he, as I said, the last 15 years has spent his time working against the state attorney's office, putting criminals back on the street.
Well, now, you work for a defense firm now. You work for a former federal prosecutor, so what kind of work are you doing right now?
That's correct. I returned to South Florida in 2008 and began working for the law firm Lewis Teen in 2009. And have been there for the last 3 years part-time.
What kind of work?
Doing complex commercial litigation, mainly financial institutions and banks, and some white-collar defense involving mainly, again, financial issues, IRS, SEC, that type of work. No violent crime.
In fairness, when you say Mr. Gershman's been in the business of putting people back on the streets, you're defending people, he can make the same argument.
He could, but I would have to say that I've never and never would represent a violent offender. The type of defense that I do is more of a negotiation with prosecutors, trying to find the gray areas and work for my client while working out some sort of agreement with the government.
Why did you decide to jump into the race? This wasn't something you had been thinking about for a long time, right? This was kind of a spur-of-the-moment decision.
Well, I've always been very interested in local government and anything to do with the state attorney's office or the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I've kept my eye on that very closely since I've returned to South Florida. I had intentions to go back to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and unfortunately, when I came back into this area, there was a hiring freeze, and it's very difficult to get back into that office, but I've had communications over the last 3 years with the U.S. Attorney trying to work something out. When I was watching the state attorney race, and when I heard that there was no longer a Republican candidate, the last I'd heard that Krista Marks was going to run, I decided that I knew I had the qualifications and experience, and I believed that the candidate at the time, Dave Ehrenberg, did not have the experience necessary.
But you said you were angry. You were quoted in the Palm Beach Post and elsewhere, and in your opening remarks when you began talking to people in the GOP in Palm Beach County, you were angry about what you called machine politics. Amplify on that.
I was angry,
and you said it drove you into the race.
That was the deciding factor. When I read the article on April 15th on the front page of the Palm Beach Post, outlining that there was no longer a Republican candidate because of intimidation tactics by the political parties, political machine that were supporting Dave Ehrenberg, I was enraged, and I believe that that was not a fair situation, and that the voters of Palm Beach County should have a choice, that the state attorney should not walk in unopposed, unexperienced, and supported by a political machine.
Well, and talk about the political machine. In what ways has that office become a political machine, and what is that doing to the people of Palm Beach County? How is that affecting the people that the state attorney is representing?
I believe that for many years, the state attorney has been handpicked by the political machine behind the scenes, not giving other candidates, Robert Gershman, for instance, a chance to even be heard by the public, by the voters. I should actually be going against one Democrat, Robert Gershman, and Dave Ehrenberg should be in a primary. I believe that the political machine handpicking the state attorney is a very dangerous situation.
Is there a bit, though, some would argue, of manufactured anger here? Since time immemorial, parties have often, here and in bigger cities, big city politics, rallied around a candidate. And so is this a bit manufactured, this angst about this democratic machine?
I don't believe it's manufactured. I believe it's true. The statements were made to the Post by Judge Krista Marks, by Judge Peter Blanc. Dave Ehrenberg calls that rumor and hearsay. That is not rumor and hearsay. Those are statements made by two judges. I've seen no clarifications or retractions by the Post indicating that any of the statements they made were inaccurate. And I don't believe that it's been magnified. I believe it's an issue. And there's a difference between politics and then manipulating the situation.
So you essentially said you jumped in the race, you wanted to give people a choice, so you're running as a Republican. We'd like to add that we're having all the candidates on. Mr. Ehrenberg certainly going to have a chance to speak out. What will you do in office? What will be your primary focuses should you be elected state attorney in Palm Beach County? Where would you focus your efforts?
My absolutely first concern is the conviction rate. Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office has the absolute lowest conviction rate in the state of Florida, in all 67 counties. And I believe that's unacceptable. And the best way to address that, I believe, is to raise the professionalism in the office, focus on training, both legal and ethics, focus on support, mentoring, taking advantage of the veteran prosecutors who are there and making sure they're in the right spots, and also working on improving the relationships with the statewide prosecutors and law enforcement. I believe that there must be mutual cooperation and respect with law enforcement, and I believe if we can raise the professionalism of the office, improve those relationships with the law enforcement, that the conviction rates will rise.
And so is that low conviction rate being blamed on Michael McAuliffe? Should take the blame for all of that, do you think, in that office?
No, definitely not. And the conviction rate in this county has always been low. From what I've read and hear from the statistics, always in the lower 50%. But to be dead last is not acceptable. And I believe that that's been going on for many years. And it's a result of issues, like I said, the professionalism, the relationships, but also maybe some charging decisions that need to be re-examined.
What goes to plea deal, what does not, that type of thing?
That type of thing, and how a case is actually charged.
But you talked philosophically, but when you bring it down to it, you look at gang crime, you look at teen issues, you look at crimes against the elderly, and all of that, you'll have a big role in helping shape that battle. You can't battle everything all at once. So specifically, what are you talking about to make this community a safer, better place? Where, in terms of going after criminals, do we need to most focus that effort?
I believe the gangs, the gang violence and the drugs are still going on and still at a level that's unacceptable. And I think that would be the primary focus of if I was the state attorney. I think that my experience in federal narcotics prosecuting would serve me very well in that role, and that would be something that I would focus on.
The fact of the matter is Dave Ehrenberg does have significant backing. He's already boasting of a healthy war chest. How are you going to get any traction? What are you seeing? Can you name any of your major endorsements? Obviously, the GOP, Sid Dinerstein, and the GOP establishment behind you. But talk about your efforts and what you're doing to kind of build the kind of campaign you're going to need to run in this race against Mr. Gershman and Mr. Ehrenberg.
Yes, I've only been in the race for 20 days, so I've been focusing on getting my message and my platform out, but of course fundraising is a very, very important part, and unfortunately in today's world it takes money to win a race, and I'm getting a vast education in that arena. I have fundraising efforts that I've already started. I can't specifically name any big endorsements right now. I would like to say that many Republicans that have gone out to endorse Dave Ehrenberg did that before they knew I was in the race. Not saying that that will change, but that was part of their decision, I'm sure. But I have a team of fundraisers, and that it will make that our main focus.
In our remaining moments, speak to the voters. Why are you the best person to be the state attorney of Palm Beach County?
I believe I'm the best person to be the state attorney of Palm Beach County because I'm experienced, I'm qualified, I'm ethical, and I believe it's time for a change. I believe it's time for someone to come into that office who doesn't have any prior relationships or preconceived notions, that can look at the office objectively and make the changes that are necessary to improve the office.
Dina Keever, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll continue to follow the contest and the race as it plays out in the summer and the fall. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We'll see you back.
That's right. And our roundtable's coming up next with a look at some of the top political issues after this.
Now for our roundtable with Brian Crowley, author of the Crowley Political Report, and George Bennett, political reporter with the Palm Beach Post. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us.
That's right. Talk about Dina Keever. What would you like to comment about what she had to say about why she's qualified to be the next state attorney?
Well, I guess what strikes me is, and the qualifications argument is going to play out between her and Gershman and Ehrenberg. I mean, the thing that you just, from a political side, you just have to realize in Palm Beach County, I don't think a Democrat has been on the ballot and lost a countywide partisan election here since, I think, 1996. It's just a very Democratic county. Ehrenberg has a huge advantage running as a Democrat, and the fact that he has two opponents rather than one makes it, even harder to defeat him.
Brian, will the experience, criticism gain traction? And what about this argument that there's a machine here? Is that legitimate, or is it a little bit of angst that works well and is very populist but maybe not have a lot of legs?
Well, as you correctly pointed out during that segment, machines are nothing new in politics, certainly nothing new in Palm Beach County. They've always operated in one fashion or another, especially in the South County area. Voters don't care. Voters don't care about that. The fact of the matter is that Ehrenberg is probably going to raise a great deal more money than the other candidates. He will have the machine behind him. It's going to be very difficult for the other candidates to take him out in this election. All these other issues, I just don't think the voters care about. The fact of the matter is, when most voters go to the poll to vote on those down ballot races, half the time they don't know who these people are. You'll notice a significant drop off when you're voting for judges and stuff like that. And so if you got a name like Ehrenberg that's been on the ballot quite a few times, and it's not like people have a bad feeling about him, I think it probably gives him an edge in this.
Sure, I mean, just losing that race for Attorney General, he was out there on TV and a lot of mailers and stuff, so I mean that boosted his name ID.
Well, we're raising their profile, giving them all a chance to speak on to the point.
Sure, absolutely.
You're doing your public service.
We hope to have Dave Ehrenberg next week, by the way.
Indeed.
All right, let's move on to another major topic this week, of course, same-sex marriage. President Obama said on Wednesday that he supports it. He said he came to that decision after giving it a lot of thought for several years. His announcement came just one day after North Carolina voters approved changing their state constitution to ban same-sex marriages. Is this an issue that could have an effect in Florida during the presidential race?
Well, to me, the question is, and I think George and I both wrote about it last week, to me, the question is, are Floridians there yet? And the suggestion is, at least in the 2008 vote, when they voted on the Defense of Marriage Act amendment, the constitutional amendment in Florida, it won by nearly 62% of the vote.
Banning same-sex marriage.
Banning same-sex marriage. So in Florida, anyway, with 29 electoral votes, Barack Obama appears to be going upstream on that issue. I noted when I was writing about this that in 1969, the state of Florida finally ratified the 1920 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote. You know, we still haven't ratified the ERA. The last time we took a vote on that was 1982, and now 3 years later we're about to celebrate the 4th anniversary of the passage of the Defense of Marriage Amendment. Florida is very slow sometimes to catch up to the rest of society on some of these issues.
George, you had an analysis piece last week, thought it would essentially be a wash. Talk about that.
Well, that's certainly a lot of people I talked to initially. That was their reaction. That, I mean, this is going to fire up activists on both sides, and at least the initial thought is, you know, this election is still going to be driven by the economy. You know, I mean, the ban on same-sex marriage passed here with 62%, the same election that Obama carried the state with 51%. So there's clearly a lot of voters that feel strongly about an issue like that, and with a lot of social issues, but whether it drives their vote for president or some other office is another matter. I mean, there's, you know, if you were drawing a Venn diagram of you know, there's clearly some overlap of people that supported that amendment and also supported Obama. You know, whether him coming out for same-sex marriage is going to cause any of those people to vote against him, I don't know.
Well, and both Republicans and Democratic operatives that I talked to last week, as did George, you know, I think they've told both of us that they don't think this will be a huge issue in the election, and it will jazz up the base for both sides. But frankly, I don't think we really know yet. We don't know how the parties are going to play with this issue. We don't know if there's some guy with $1 billion who wants to do a super PAC who gets himself all jazzed up about this issue one way or the other and wants to play it. There's a lot of unknowns, I think, at this point about how this is going to play out as an election issue.
Yeah, and how long will it stay a focal point? I mean, when does the economy get back on top as the issue that affects every American?
I still care about gas prices, you know, and I think most people, when I pulled up to the pump the other day on my way down to Miami, I was glad I didn't have to spend $60 to fill up the tank, and it was only 48 or something. You know, I think people react to that. I think, you know, in this, you know, Obama last week started a couple of new commercials. One of them was focusing on both focused on the economy. One in particular used just a graphic that showed unemployment declining under his watch. But in Florida, where unemployment is still really, really high and a lot of people are underemployed, I think those are probably far tougher issues for him than gay marriage.
There is an argument to be made, though, as the latest polls last week showed a tightening of the race, really a statistical tie between the president and Mitt Romney in Florida, crucial swing state. Could, though the economy remains the dominant issue, could a social issue, a hot-button issue like this, be enough to push one way or the other? That's going to be the interesting dynamic to watch as we sit here and as you talk to people out on the hustings in the next few months.
Sure. I mean, one thing, you know, Romney has had trouble throughout the primary galvanizing social conservatives. They've always been kind of lukewarm to him. I mean, you saw them clinging to Santorum or Bachmann or whatever. You know, this issue, I don't know, even if they don't warm up to Romney, this will probably solidify them more against Obama than they already were for that group of voters. But again, you know, whether that you know, tips the scale one way or another is really hard to say.
I think it's a far more troubling issue for Republicans long term than it is for Democrats. I mean, a lot of the Republicans you talk to now will cheerfully say to you that they support civil unions, which is really splitting hairs between marriage and stuff. But it wasn't that long ago where if you talk to most Republicans, they oppose civil unions. And many Republicans who are, say, 40 and younger, they think it's a non-issue, the gay marriage. So I think, maybe not this election, but down the road, and some Republicans will admit this, it becomes a much more complicated issue for the Republican Party.
All right, we'll be back to chat more after this.
And now time, drum roll please, for the Crowley Closer.
Well, big news out of the Florida Supreme Court last week. The Supreme Court ruled that the counties can have term limits, which means that Bert Aronson and Karen Marcus, who were sort of hoping there wouldn't be term limits, now find themselves facing term limits and being out of office. So, of course, good news for the people who would like to replace them. But it was a big decision that affects a number of counties around the state.
Do you think it's good for Palm Beach County as a whole?
You know, I have mixed emotions about term limits. I think that sometimes the term limits are too short. And when you look at sometimes what's going on in the Florida legislature, you can see what damage term limits can do. And a lot of Republicans who supported term limits long ago now think it's the silliest thing they ever did.
The debate goes on.
That's all right. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks to George Bennett, also to Brian Crowley. And thank you for being with us. Happy Mother's Day to all of you moms. We hope you enjoyed today's show.
Happy Mother's Day to you.
Well, thank you. Exactly. Hope you had breakfast in bed or something nice like that.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye-bye.